got three motions, man. We got Raw Dope Podcast, what it is, huh? We got I haven't started to call you yesterday for real. See what the fuck you was doing. But yeah, we got a motion. The second motion, Judge Durk filed so he don't have his jury anonymous. Nah, I don't think that motion is gonna fly. I think based off the violence that they saying Durk participated in, it's definitely gonna be anonymous jury. Ashley Houston filed another motion trying to get the count 4 tossed out. And then we got the motion to dismiss, saying that the original indictment is too vague and that their number one witness is a fucking liar. So the witness that participated in the murder is a liar. Yo, how many times have I told y'all? No, I don't like that. How many times have I told y'all, right? That yo, most of these rats give multiple statements, yo. It's very seldom. I'm talking about the street rats. Street rats give multiple statements. That's why I told y'all, yo, I would never even, like, if I was on the jury and the street guy turned rat, get on the stand, I'm discrediting the whole statement. I ain't gonna lie. I'm discrediting everything. You heard me? I don't give a fuck if it lines up with the facts. That nigga lying. Straight up. That's what they do. That's what they do, yo. They lie to say their self, man. And kind of find out that this guy gave multiple fucking statements. Y'all make sure y'all share it live. Say Plaintiff United States of America hereby files its reply in support of his motion to impanel an anonymous jury. Alright, this is the government motion. What the fuck did Durk and them say? Oh yeah, I think we read Durk motion too. A couple of days ago. Alright, so juror confidentiality is just one of the security measures this court should adopt to ensure a fair trial. Prevent improper attempts to influence jurors and to otherwise protect the judicial process. Defendants do not meaningfully grapple with the fact that support anonymity. The violent history of defendants and their associates, OTF associates, willingness to use violence against OTFs and defendant banks' rivals, the witness tampering that has already occurred in this case, and defendant banks' contempt for the judicial process, including his obstruction of an investigation into his clandestine. Oh, alright. Unmonitored jail communication. Instead, defendants brush them aside as speculation and mischaracterization and minimize the consequence of defendants' own words and conducts. The crux of defendants' opposition is that it fails to contest or even mention that defendant Banks instructs his willing associates to hunt his rivals. I mean, but that's major. If that's what the whole case is about. Yo, see, this is the thing about this case, yo. Like, don't get me wrong. Y'all know the feds play dirty. But it don't look like they got a strong case, like, on its merits. You know, they'll fabricate some shit and misclassify some things to make it look strong. But I'm just talking about just the evidence. If the evidence was to stand alone, look at the evidence they got with no explanation, just the evidence. Ain't really nothing tying Durk and said that he dropped no bread. And wait till you hear what person was it PW1 said. Now he backtracked from saying it was a bounty paid. First he said he was being pressured. See, yo, this is what I be trying to explain to y'all about these people, yo. They will coerce witnesses, man. That's what they do, and they get away with it. They will coerce witnesses into people saying exactly what they want them to say, even if it's not the truth. and they charge and convict people based off of that. Nobody need to be paid to slide for King Von, man. These factors strongly weigh in favor of heightened measures to safeguard the jury's fact-finding mission and to establish law that a thorough jury questionnaire and a neutral explanation for confidentiality adequately protects the right to meaningful voir dire. That's basically jury selection. At bottom, withholding a limited set of juror information from both parties, coupled with the Ninth Circuit approved protective measures and constitutionally permissible steps to ensure a safe and fair trial. Defendants attempt to isolate and downplay each of the non-exhaustive factors this court considered when evaluating the need for jury anonymity. Their analysis misses the mark at each turn. First, defendant contends that defendant Banks has no affiliation with organized crime and that OTF is a record label and professional entity, nothing more. The government does not dispute that OTF is in part a legitimate business operation, but OTF's and its defendants Banks' public success does not contradict or OTF associates, criminality, and violence. Indeed, defendant did not contest that two shooters charged with murder in the Northern District of Illinois discussed payment from OTF and defendant Banks following the execution of Chicago gang member 1. So they talk about the Chicago case. The OTF associates, including the defendant in this case, act at defendant Banks' direction with his funds to hunt and exact revenge on OTF rivals, and that defendant and other OTF associates have violent criminal histories. Rather, defendant claims that these factors are too anonymous. What the fuck is that word? Attenuated to demonstrate a risk to jury safety and impartiality. As explained in the government's motion, these factors demonstrate the capacity of defendants, OTF associates, and or their supporters to intimidate those who may pose a risk to the liberty of OTF members, including jurors who will render a verdict in this case. Second, the defendant proclaims there is no risk of interference with witnesses in the judicial process. But the defendant failed to mention the actual interference that has occurred in this case. OTF associates' threat to and intimidation of suspected government witness under seal, and defendant Banks' contempt for judicial process as demonstrated by his obstructive conduct at MDC. They always try to do that, yo. Using a cell phone and that's just, people do that shit in jail, man. Like they try to make it seem like that's like it's not normal. Like people that go above, people that use jail or bikes, like we call them, people that use a bike in a joint. It's just breaking all type of laws. Like, man, that shit is common practice, man. It's like smoking cigarettes. You know what I mean? Not saying it's okay. I'm just saying to use that as a means to try to justify their reasoning as to why they need an anonymous jury is crazy, man. I get it. It's cell phones, but it's not uncommon. That's all I'm trying to say. Just because you use a cell phone, that don't mean you trying to break law. Jail phones be crowded. Sometimes, it's just, people use it for different reasons. Instead of analyzing these tangible facts, defendant Banks claims that his explicit disdain for cooperating witness, I hate all rats. Look, there you go to DJ Academics interview. DJ Academics bitch ass keep popping back up. Has Academics spoken on this yet? Dr. Force, what it is? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Money Mix, they acting like that shit. Like, that's the same thing they did to Diddy, man. Well, let me share this. That's the same thing they did to Diddy. Like, they acting like that shit is like it's like having a knife. You know what I mean? Act like that shit like having a knife in the joint, y'all. Y'all, make sure y'all share the live, y'all. If anybody want to come up, the link in there. I put the link in the comments. But here go this. Did DA Academics ever speak on the capacity of his interview being all in Durk paperwork? I told y'all that interview with DJ Academics helped set Durk up, man. He never admitted, but that line of questioning was crazy. That whole interview, the King Von question, it was crazy, yo. It was irrelevant at that time. That's why when he asked it, he said, I don't know if they still saying this, because they wasn't still saying it. It was no need to bring that shit back up. It's material to the court analysis. Since unrelated public figures have purportedly made similar comments, but the totality of facts presented by the government show that defendants and their OTF associates have demonstrated their willingness and capability to interfere with this trial and impair the jury's fact-finding mission. Third, defendants' arguments that media attention cannot alone justify an anonymous jury misconstrues the government's argument. This court analysis considered 5 non-exhaustive factors and is peculiar context specific. Both parties agree that this case has and will continue to garner significant media attention, and it is undisputed that the publicity has already led to attempts to intimidate individuals connected to this case. It is therefore non-speculative that defendants, their affiliates, and or their supporters pose a risk to the integrity of the jury's fact-finding mission. Finally, defendants contend that although the protection of the jury's information from the public and the media may be appropriate, an anonymous jury impairs the defendant's ability to conduct meaningful voir dire, undermining the right to an impartial trial under the Sixth Amendment. But potential jurors do not lose their... What is that? Okay, let's read this. Defendants state they intend to file a motion to dismiss the indictment based on the timing of the government's disclosure of the threats to the magistrate judge and United States Attorney. Defendant assertion that the government impermissibly withheld discoverable information from the defense is categorically false. To the extent defendant pursued this frivolous litigation, the government will provide a thorough response at that time. Defendant's citation to the other high-profile cases that did not impanel an anonymous jury similarly missed the mark. The government does not contend that high-profile nature of this case alone warrants additional jury protection. Rather, the totality of the facts analyzed by the government in its motion supports its request measures. Defendant Banks also repeatedly argues that he cannot be a source of a threat to jurors because he is in custody. The contention ignores one, his own violations of MDC rules concerning his use of other inmates' pens that make phone calls, and his possession and subsequent attempt to destroy a contraband Apple Watch with cellular capabilities. The fact that threats from his supporters would be just as damaging to the jurors and the trial itself. Threats from a defense personal identification information is paramount concerning this case, where supporters have already made threats to a magistrate judge and a prosecutor. I don't know why niggas was doing that. That was stupid. Alright, so that's the first motion. Yo, he not getting the that jury gonna be unanimous. I mean anonymous. Alright, so this asks the Houston motion to try to get rid of count 4. They've been trying to get rid of count 4. I think count 4 is the they don't have no evidence that a bounty was placed. They don't have no evidence that a bounty was placed. He probably had a whole bunch of case law. I ain't reading no case law. Defendant asked Houston moved this court to dismiss count 4 of the second superseding indictment, charging him with use, carry, and discharge of a firearm and machine gun in furtherance of a crime of violence resulting in death. Let me say this to y'all. Another thing that people gotta understand. What it is. That so-called The incident that they speaking about where they say after the shooting, they went to a, what the fuck they say they went to, they got some gloves or something from a sporting good, before the shooting, they got gloves from a sporting goods store. Then after the shooting, they went and got something to eat. Yo, I don't know if they got video or any of that. Like I told y'all before, y'all, like a lot of these things sound, strong. The strongest evidence they got is the booking of the flights. But as far as anything that happened before the flights, in between the flights getting booked and after the murder, they don't have none of that shit on video. A lot of these establishments don't carry video. They got tapes that roll over. So, depending on when this investigation started, depending on when this witness started cooperating, if there's a chance they don't got nobody on video going to the sporting goods store getting gloves. They don't got nobody on video at this food spot getting something to eat. All that is just somebody talking. It's just speculation. And if it's the same person that gave multiple statements, then that makes his statements not credible. And I told y'all, most rats give multiple statements, the in and out. Yeah, ain't no proof they got that on video. That's just somebody talking. They probably went there to get that fucking footage, and they ain't have it. Because they never said they got it on video, if you notice. He argued that neither of the predicate crimes alleged the government to be crimes of violence required the intentional use of violence, physical force, without a requisite crime of violence. Count 4 had to be dismissed. The government opposed this motion, but makes two important concessions that will play a significant role in this case going forward. Government's opposition to defendant Asa Houston motion to dismiss count 4 of the second superseding indictment. First, it has abandoned 1958A. The government opposed to the motion makes two important concessions that will play out. First, it abandons 1958A as a predicate to support 1924C charged in count 4. Second, it has elected to proceed only under whatever that the defendants engaged in the course of conduct that placed the victims in reasonable fear of death or serious bodily injury resulting in SR's death, not under 2261A 2B. Regardless of the outcome of this motion, the concession means that the jury must be instructed as that the theory of the crime alone, not only to other theories set forth in count 3 of the second superseding indictment. Given this concession, and for the reasons set forth in the opening motion and below, this court should find there is no predicate crime. This motion goes a little bit more in depth about the case right here. Alright, here we go. I don't even think I'm gonna read this. I'm gonna check this shit out real quick. The government's opposition was this opportunity to highlight specifics, either in the indictment itself or in the discovery, that clarify its basic theory with respect to two things, and two things only: the alleged bounty, and two, the pervasive yet vague at the direction of acquisition. But it fails to do so. Instead, the opposition recites a great length detail in the indictment that are irrelevant to the instant motion, and then states in conclusory fashion that the discovery fails in any missing pieces on essential elements, without explaining how or laying a record for the court to decide whether it is true. Fuck. The court should see through this smoke screen and decline to blindly take the government's word that discovery puts Mr. Banks on constitutionally sufficient notice. Without the court's intervention, this vague indictment becomes a blank check that the government has written itself, allowing Mr. Banks' prosecution on facts that were not presented to the grand jury, that would take him by surprise at trial, and that are continually shifting as government cooperators change their story. They say the government cooperators are changing their story, man. And have you hit the link yet? No. Indictment details treatment of other subject matters does not make up for its vagueness on the bounty and at the direction of allegations. At the outset, it is important to clarify what Mr. Banks is and is not arguing in this motion. In his motion, Mr. Banks takes issue with two deficiencies in the indictment. The first is that the indictment fails to allege the essential factors with reasonable particularity of time, place, and circumstances, which means they keep saying it was a bounty placed, but they don't say how much the bounty was, when was this bounty placed, how was this bounty placed. It's just a vague indictment. Related to the alleged bounty, that this is the element of murder for hire charge. It alleges only that at some point in a nearly 2-year time frame between November 6, 2020 and August 22nd, 2022, Mr. Banks made clear in coded language, they never explained what coded language means, to defendant Wilson and co-conspirators 2, 4, and 5 and others that he would pay a bounty or monetary reward and or pay money in lucrative music opportunities to anyone who took part in killing TB. The second is that it fails to allege the essential facts about the direction that Mr. Banks is alleged to have given in furtherance of count 3 through 5. Directions that are his only alleged link to crimes carried out by others in his absence. Mr. Banks argues vagueness on these two topics alone. Mr. Banks does not argue that the indictment is fatally vague in other ways. For example, with respect to motive of TB murder, the time, date, circumstances of the stalking, gun possession, and the murder of SR, what facilitates an interstate commerce, what was used, or the overt acts necessary to support a conspiracy charge. Yet the government wants the court to find that the inclusion of details on these other matters render the indictment valid across the board. In opposition, introduction cites the indictment robust allegations about the motive for the murder. Details about how the defendant stalked the murder victim vehicle for hours leading up to the killing, including photographs. And remember that photograph I showed y'all was flawed as a motherfucker too. Remember I showed y'all that photograph and how they made it seem like that the car that these guys supposed to have been in was right behind the car that Quando Rondo was in? Yo, that shit wasn't, it don't look right. Y'all remember, if y'all remember when we looked at the photographs. Like, in the photographs, they're putting the car right behind each other. But when you look at the car by itself, in another photograph, you don't see none of them boys nowhere close by. You don't see them in the picture. So that was misleading. They probably showed that to the grand jury that way. Over the next 4 pages, it regurgitates all of the indictment's allegations, including those that do not matter here, in great detail. At 1 through 4, of course, the government can cite to no robust allegations, let alone a bare bones time, place, or circumstances about the bounty, offers acceptance, or the direction that Mr. Banks is alleged to have given to the purported co-conspirators. The reason for that omission is simple. The indictment contains none. The government then goes on to argue that these details about murders other than the bounty and at the direction of allegations are all that are necessary to pass constitutional muster. So he talking about they keep bringing up all these other cases that ain't got nothing to do with this case. Here the SSI includes the elements of the offenses, the date and place of the murder, the motive, the participants, and the actions they took leading up to, and includes criminality. And later, it argues that it is enough that the SSI, you on? Names the particularly the date and place of the murder, the participants and motive, and 27 overt acts describing the actions leading up to. Alright, murder as well as the murder itself. The indictment could contain 1,000 alleged overt acts, but if it's missing any essential facts giving rise to the charges, it fails nonetheless. Just like it names the date and place of the murder, it should name the date and place of the bounty offer. I agree. The government focus on non-pertinent details is a distraction. The presence of these details does not make up for the indictment failure to provide reasonable particularity of time, place, and circumstances where it matters on the alleged bounty offer that is essential. Where it matters on the alleged bounty offer that is essential element of the murder for hire charges, and on the direction that there are only alleged link between Mr. Banks and other charged crimes. As to those critical subject matters, the indictment is void of reasonable particular of time, place, and circumstances. Mr. Banks seeks only what he is entitled to under the law, the government's central theories of prosecution. Even the government has to admit, a defendant is entitled to know the time, place, and circumstances of a transaction giving rise to the charge. But the government nonetheless argues that the indictment here suffices because the information on defendant's request, the specific language defendant used in ordering the bounty, and the direction of his co-conspirators are not operative or central facts of the case. How the fuck is that not the central fact of the case? If you said I placed the bounty, then you should be able to say how much the bounty was and when I placed it. I mean, you would think that, but you know the feds, how they operate. What you think about that, Ham? You heard me. Now he done walked off. Alright, let's get back here. The information defendants seek is merely the details of acts and furtherance of the conspiracy. A bounty offer is, however, a necessary transaction giving rise to a murder for hire charge, and a prosecution under the recipient of promise agreement to pay something of peculiar value as consideration for murder is an essential element of the offense, and the intent to pay someone to commit the murder is a critical element as well. And because Mr. Banks did not himself stalk anybody, shoot anybody, or possess a gun in furtherance of that stalking, the means and manner of his alleged remote participation, the direction he alleged gave to others, are essential to the case against him on counts 3, 4, and 5. Those directions are, in fact, the only transaction giving rise to those charges as relate to Mr. Banks. Mr. Banks is entitled to know the government's essential theory, the who, what, where, when, and how, on these essential points. The government obscures things when it argues that the words used, the government obscures things when it argues that the words used themselves are not essential of the offense. Consider a charge that we more commonly see in federal court, wire fraud. Imagine an indictment that alleges the following. At some point between November 20th, 2020 and August of 2022, the defendant made material misrepresentations about investment opportunities to Mr. Wilson and others in order to cause them to part with certain valuable possessions and or money. It would be beyond a reasonable dispute that this language fails to put the defendant on notice of the charges against him. You right? You feel me? Like how you gonna say somebody wire frauded, but you don't give no date? I agree. But we know it's the federal government, you know how they operate. It does not enable him to prepare his defense, to assert that he never made the statements as issue, that they were not false, that they were not material, or they were not designed to cause victims to part with money or property, among many other potential defenses. It does not protect witnesses against double jeopardy. In a subsequent prosecution, the government could argue that these other statements from the bias for the new wire fraud charge form the bias for the new wire fraud charges. What is more, it obliterates the important function of the grand jury and permits the government to shift its theory as the case progresses. That is true. It gave them wiggle room. That's how they took out. That's how they was able to take out that motherfucking the monetary bounty. They took that shit out the indictment. Reverse fraud conviction, where indictment failed to specify the alleged false representation because it gives the government a free hand to assert a vital part of the indictment without reference to the grand jury. A bounty offer is essential to a murder for hire charge as a material misrepresentation is to a wire fraud charge. And where Mr. Banks' alleged direction to his alleged co-conspirators are the only thing tying him to counts 3 through 5, the circumstances of those directions are essential to his prosecution as well. To be clear, Mr. Banks is not requesting the details of the evidence the government will present at trial. The specific documents, text messages, emails, cell site location information, or recordings the government will introduce, or the names of the government witnesses who will testify in support of the government's theory of the case. Date, time, and location of core transaction property, the subject of a bill of particulars, but not the names of government witnesses who will testify about those transactions. Mr. Banks is only requesting the government's basic theory, without which he cannot adequately prepare for trial. By way of example, let's consider Mr. Banks' request for the particulars of the coded language he's alleged to have used to offer the bounty for TB murder. The issue of so-called coded language will loom large at this trial, with the government arguing that the jury should assign certain meanings to factually ambiguous language, and the defense contesting those interpretations. Let's imagine that Mr. Banks is kept in the dark before trial about what coded language means he alleged used to offer the bounty. Then at trial, the following hypothetical is completely fictitious. A government witness testifies that Mr. Banks told him the eagle has landed, and in certain neighborhoods in Chicago, the eagle has landed means that the speaker is offering a bounty for murder. Having heard these words and this interpretation for the first time at trial, the defense would be unprepared to effectively cross-examine the witness about the meaning of these words. The defense will have done no research, conduct no investigation, lined up no witnesses to rebut that interpretation. That is the definition of trial by surprise, and its primary danger posed by a vague indictment. A danger of a vague indictment is that it does not permit a defendant to prepare an adequate defense, to address himself to the relevant questions of fact and law. The same goes for the other information Mr. Banks requests in the bill of particulars, including the date and location of the alleged bounty. The indictment lists no location of the alleged offer. It alleged a nearly 2-year time frame in which the bounty could have occurred. If the defendants hear for the first time at trial that the bounty offer was conveyed, for example, in a coffee shop in Chicago on January 5th, 2021, it will be scrambling to figure out whether Mr. Banks was even in Chicago in January of 2021. There may have been a witness who have testified that Mr. Banks was actually in Atlanta at that time, but the defense will have been deprived of the opportunity to locate and call that witness. The Sixth Amendment guarantees Mr. Banks all persons charged with crimes more notice than that. Bald assertions that the discovery fails in the blanks are not enough. The government asks the court to find that discovery has produced, eliminates all doubt. The fuck you just do, huh? Oh, alright. You know your mic off, right? The government asks the court to find that discovery is produced eliminates all doubt that the defendants are able to understand the theory of the government's case, yet it lays no record that would allow such a finding. Holding that discovery, what the fuck is that word? Obviates any need for bill of particulars based on a record of discovery content, including grand jury transcripts and memorandum revealing the government's theory. It only alleges that the discovery is voluminous, that with each production, the government also provided a detailed index, including the index listing the discovery being produced, and that additional details have been provided in the discovery. If that doubt eliminated, oh my god, my fucking computer ready to die. Oh, yeah, where we at? Thought this bitch was charged. If that doubt eliminated discovery exists, the government would certainly have cited it in its opposition. Yet it does not. Indeed, nowhere does discovery set forth any resembling a fixed or coherent theory of time, place, and circumstances of the bounty allegations or the direction of allegations. On the contrary, discovery reveals government witnesses who are consistently changing their stories. Remember I told y'all, most street rats give multiple stories. I would never trust them. If I was on the jury, I would discredit everything they said. PW1 for example, has asserted that there was no bounty at all, that he did not agree to murder TB for monetary gain, and that he did so under duress. But as one might expect in a murder for hire prosecution predicated on the existence of a bounty, he rises to meet the accusation. In one government profit session, PW1 recounts how Mr. Wilson allegedly stayed behind in Los Angeles after the other participants flew out. And we know that's not true, so he already lying. So he lied, right? See, that's what I'm saying, yo. Like, yo, these niggas ain't credible. He already lied because the Fed said that they all left. But you got the government witness saying that Didi stayed back. And how do you, what the fuck does under duress mean? Like, yo, what the fuck, you persuaded? Like, if you don't slide, then we cutting you off? Like, yo, who fault is that, yo? I mean, how do you get persuaded to slide? Like, you ain't have to slide, bro. You had to do nothing. Could have stayed your bitch ass in the house, bitch. It's a fuck. These niggas be crazy, right? PW1 recounts how Mr. Wilson allegedly stayed behind in Los Angeles after the other participants flew out in order to collect the bounty money for distribution. PW1's story is, however, faulty, flatly contradicted by the objective evidence. The government's realization that PW1 lied here is likely why, between the first indictment and the second indictment, it deleted language alleging that Mr. Wilson paid out the bounty after SR's homicide. When the government witnesses are constantly changing their stories about the crucial facts, as the discovery catalog here, Mr. Banks' defense must take aim at a moving target. This is fundamentally unfair. I'm trying to tell y'all. People gonna be surprised, man. Like, I know the feds play dirty, but I'm talking about, I don't think they got no real strong case, man. I think a lot of these witnesses are gonna get tore up on the stand. A lot of them probably recant. You know, it's a difference between, I mean, it ain't a difference, but a lot of people can tell, but a lot of motherfuckers ain't getting on that stand telling. Oh, God. Fuck, get on that stand and fold like lawn chairs. The government should be clear with Mr. Banks and with the court about its theory of prosecution, which iteration of its witnesses ever changes stories will stand behind that trial. Importantly, the government told the grand jury again, this scenario is completely fictitious. That Mr. Banks' coded bounty offer was the statement that the Eagle has landed, made in Chicago coffee shop. Hold up. The government should be clear with Mr. Banks and with the court about its theory of prosecution. Which iteration of its witnesses' ever-changing stories will it stand behind at trial? Importantly, the government is not free to simply pick its favorite version. If the government told the grand jury, again, this scenario is completely fictitious, so this is a fake scenario, that Mr. Banks' coded bounty offer was the statement that the Eagle has landed, made in the Chicago coffee shop on January 2021, and the grand jury indicted Mr. Banks based on that theory, then the government may not switch it up simply because its witnesses' stories became more convincing over time. That's a fact. Now, I think this motion is going, I don't know if they're going to dismiss this motion. I mean, but they're going to have to release that evidence, man. They're going to have to release that evidence. Like, I can't see the judge not ruling in favor with Durk and them on this. I can't see it. They got to release that evidence. You can't say I placed the bounty and then don't give me no details on when I placed it and who I told this to. Like, they don't have none of that shit. Then the government may not switch up simply because its witnesses' stories became more convincing over time. At 701, reverse conviction where the absence of allegations whatsoever and the indictment as to what the false pretenses were, the United States attorney will have a free hand to assert its vital part of the indictment without reference to the grand jury. The law does not vest him with such authority. Probation against vague indictments serves as to ensure that defendants are prosecuted on facts presented to the grand jury. Under the case law, when an indictment is as vague as this one, it is defective and must be dismissed, in the words of the Ninth Court. Damn, okay. If a bill of particulars were allowed to save an insufficient indictment, the role of the grand jury as interveners would be circumvented, rather than assurance that a body of fellow citizens had asserted the facts, assessed the facts, and determined that an individual should face prosecution. The prosecutors would be in position to second guess what actually happened within the grand jury and fill in the gaps with what he assumed transpired. Can't do that. We learned that in one of the other trials. You can't in the O Block trial, you can't just fill in the gaps with assumptions. Like, you can't do that shit. The prosecution of a significant check on the power of the court and the prosecutors would thus be lost. For similar reasons, open file discovery cannot cure an invalid indictment. I don't know if they're going to dismiss. I think he's going to make them turn that information over. It is a settled rule that a bill of particulars cannot save an invalid indictment. If the court does, in lieu of dismissal, order a bill of particulars, it should take steps to ensure that the bill of particulars reflects the essential factors that form the basis for the grand jury decision to indict. Namely, the court should conduct an camera review of grand jury transcripts to ensure the government's bill of particulars reflects them faithfully, both in its bill of particulars and down the road. At trial, the government is not permitted to prosecute Mr. Banks on allegations other than those presented to and approved by the grand jury. The Constitution does not permit the government or its cooperators eager to say what they must to try and save their own skin to fill in the gaps. Yep, can't do that. The Constitution does not permit the government or its cooperators eager to say what they must to try and save their own skin to fill in the gaps. Conclusion. For the reasons set forth in Mr. Banks' motion above, defendant Durk Banks respectfully requests that the court dismiss the indictment against him as unconstitutionally vague. In the alternative, the court should order the government to produce the requested bill of particulars companion with the grand jury transcripts. Now, this is what they're going to do. They're not going to throw out the case, but they're going to have to do this. They're going to have to produce a bill of particulars, and they're going to have to compare it with the grand jury transcripts in order to ensure the government does not impermissibly shift its theory of prosecution. I think that's what's going to happen. I think that's the best thing that can happen.
Nigga can't do what I do, y'all niggas can't copy me. Let's keep shit G. Let's keep shit G. Let's keep the shit G. Let's keep shit G. Let's keep shit G.